Most people think airlines make their money from selling plane tickets. That's actually the least profitable part of their entire business. The real money comes from somewhere completely different. And once you know where, you'll never look at air travel the same way again. Let me break down exactly how airlines turned what looks like a losing game into a money-making machine. Because here's the thing, those dirt-cheap flights you see advertised everywhere, they're not accidents, they're traps. And the airline industry has figured out how to make more money from you in ways you never even realized. The crazy part is that this shift happened relatively recently. Just 20 or 30 years ago, airlines actually made most of their money from ticket sales. But then something changed. Competition got brutal, budget airlines started popping up everywhere, and suddenly every airline was trying to undercut each other on price. Ticket prices went down and down and down. So what did the big airlines do? They had to figure out a completely different way to make money, and they did it in a way that's honestly kind of genius from a business perspective, even if it's annoying for passengers like us. Today, I'm going to walk you through every single way airlines make money now. And I'm not talking about just the obvious stuff like baggage fees. I'm talking about the hidden revenue streams that most people have no idea about. By the end of this, you're going to understand exactly why your flights keep getting more expensive, even though the ticket price says it's cheap, and you'll see how the airline industry basically figured out how to charge you for everything. Here's what we're covering today. First, we're going to look at what ticket prices actually represent nowadays. Then, we're going to go through the actual revenue breakdown of a major airline so you can see where the money really comes from. After that, I'm going to show you all the sneaky fees that add up fast. And finally, I'll give you some real strategies to actually save money when you fly. Because once you understand how they make money, you can beat their system. Let's start with the most shocking part. What airlines actually charge you for when you buy a ticket. The death of ticket revenue. When you buy a plane ticket, you might think you're paying the airline for the flight. But that's not really what's happening anymore. The ticket price is basically just the base fare, and it's often calculated so low that it's barely profitable at all. Think about it like this. In 2023, the average ticket price in the United States was somewhere around $300 to $400 for a domestic flight. But that number is just the headline price. That's not what people actually pay. When you sit down at a computer and start buying a flight, you get to checkout, and suddenly the price is $50 or $100 more because of all these extra charges that pop up at the very end. The airlines know that people comparison shop based on that headline number, so they keep the base fare low to win the comparison, then they add everything else on top. It's a psychological trick, but it's totally legal and it works. Here's the real crazy part, though. Airlines often operate on razor-thin margins on ticket sales. Sometimes they actually lose money on the ticket alone. A flight from New York to Los Angeles might sell a ticket for $300, but the fuel, crew, maintenance, and airport fees to operate that flight might cost more than that. So how do they make money if they're losing money on the ticket? That's where everything else comes in. The real revenue breakdown. Let's look at what a typical major airline's revenue actually looks like. I'm using data from one of the biggest carriers, but this breakdown is pretty similar across the industry. So let's say an airline has $100 million in total revenue over a year. Where does it come from? About 40 to 50% comes from passenger ticket sales. That's the base fare you see advertised. For $100 million in revenue, that's 40 to 50 million from actual flight tickets. Sounds like a lot, but when you divide that by the thousands of flights they operate, it's not huge per flight. Another 15 to 20% comes from baggage fees. This is huge. Every checked bag costs money now. Most airlines charge between $25 and $35 for a first checked bag and $50 for a second one. And with millions of passengers flying every single day, this adds up incredibly fast. Just the baggage revenue alone could be $15 to $20 million a year for a major carrier. Then there's seat selection fees. If you want to pick your seat in advance instead of getting randomly assigned one at the gate, you're paying. This might be $5 on a budget airline up to $15 or $20 on a bigger carrier if you want a good seat. This alone brings in $3 to $5 million a year for a big airline. Upgrade fees are another huge one. People pay to upgrade from economy to premium economy or business class. On a single transcontinental flight, an airline might have 50 people paying an average of $150 to upgrade. That's $7,500 in upgrade revenue on just one flight. With hundreds of daily flights, this gets insane. This could be another $10 to $15 million yearly. Baggage and checked-in luggage beyond the first bag adds more. If you're bringing 3 bags instead of 2, you're paying again. If you're bringing sports equipment or musical instruments, there are special fees for that too. Then there's the food and beverage service. When you buy a drink on a flight or a snack, that's pure revenue for the airline. On an international flight, the markup on that 50-cent bottle of water they're selling you for $5 is insane. This is another few $1 million a year. Loyalty program revenue is something people don't think about. Frequent flyer miles have actual value. Credit card companies pay airlines billions of dollars a year for the right to sell co-branded credit cards to customers. People get miles for using those cards, and those miles have to be redeemed by the airline eventually, which costs them. But the credit card companies pay up front, so the airline gets cash immediately. This can be $5 to $10 million a year. Then there's cargo revenue. Airlines use the cargo hold of passenger planes to ship packages and goods. This has become a huge business, especially after companies like Amazon needed more shipping capacity. Cargo revenue can be $10 to $15 million a year for a major airline. And finally, there are ancillary revenues from things like seat-back pocket advertisements, in-flight shopping, partnership deals with rental car companies, hotel chains, and insurance products they try to sell you. So when you add all of this up, you're looking at a situation where the airline is actually making 30 to 40% of its revenue from things that are not the ticket price. The psychology behind the fees. Now here's where it gets interesting from a business strategy perspective. The airlines know that you're comparing prices based on the headline number, so they keep that number as low as possible, even if it means barely breaking even on the ticket itself. They know they'll make it up on the back end with all the fees. This is called ancillary revenue, and it's completely transformed how airlines think about their business. Instead of thinking about how to maximize ticket sales, they think about how many ways they can charge you for everything related to flying. The genius of this model is that it actually works incredibly well. A lot of people think airlines are struggling, but the big carriers have been posting record profits in recent years. They're not struggling. They've just shifted where they make their money. But here's the thing that really matters for you as a customer. Understanding this model means you can actually work around it. Once you know where the money really comes from, you can make decisions that save you money. How the fees actually add up. Let me give you a concrete example of what a real flight costs versus what people think it costs. Let's say you're flying from Chicago to Miami on a Tuesday in June. You go online and you see a flight for $179. That's the headline price. You think, okay, that's pretty cheap, let me book it. But then you get to checkout. Here's what actually happens. Base fare, $179. But wait, you have a checked bag. That's $30 right there for the first bag. You also want to pick your seat instead of being randomly assigned one at the gate. That's another $10 for a decent middle seat or $15 if you want an aisle seat where you can actually get up easily. You realize you need to check a second bag because you're going for a week. That's another $30. So now your ticket cost is $264 instead of $179. But the airline also gives you a carry-on bag. Most people don't realize this, but on some airlines now, even a carry-on bag costs money if you're on a basic economy ticket. That might be $30 or $40. So we're up to $304 now, and you haven't even gotten on the plane yet. Now let's say you want to pay to board early, so you can be one of the first people on and get overhead bin space. That's another $8 to $15 depending on the airline. Let's say 15. We're at $319. Now you get to the airport and you realize you're going to be hungry on this 3-hour flight. You buy a sad-looking sandwich and a bottle of water at the gate before you board. That's probably $18. We're at $337. On the flight itself, you might buy a drink or a snack from the beverage service. That's another $8. We're at $345 for what started as a $179 flight. But wait, there's more. When you land in Miami, you need a rental car. The airline has a partnership with a rental car company, and they try to sell you a deal. You book through their website, and the car company gives the airline a commission on that booking. You don't see this, but the airline just made money off that transaction too. And if you're not already a frequent flyer member, you sign up at the gate for free. But then you get home and you get an email about their co-branded credit card that gives you free checked bags if you use the card. You sign up for the card, the credit card company pays the airline probably $40 per new customer, and now the airline has made money off your credit card application too. The point is that what started as a $179 flight ended up costing you almost $350 out of pocket, and the airline made money off you in at least 5 or 6 different ways. The business model that changed everything. Here's what really changed the airline industry. In the early 2000s, budget airlines like Southwest, Ryanair, and Spirit started operating with a completely different model. They stripped away all the frills. No free checked bags, no free seat selection, no free snacks, no free anything, really. They just flew you from point A to point B as cheaply as possible. This forced the traditional carriers to respond. Because if a business traveler is booking a flight on their company card, they're going to pick the cheapest option every time. So the legacy carriers had to match those cheap prices or lose business. But they couldn't operate at a loss, so they had to figure out where to make money instead. The answer was ancillary revenue. They basically said, okay, we'll match the cheap ticket price, but we're going to charge for everything else. And that worked. Customers thought they were getting a great deal on a $200 ticket, not realizing they were going to end up paying $350 when all the fees were added in. Now, here's the dark side of this business model from a customer perspective. Airlines have actually started making their basic economy experience worse on purpose to encourage people to pay more. They might give you a smaller carry-on bag if you're in basic economy. They might make you sit in the back of the plane. They might not let you board until everyone else is boarded. They might not give you access to overhead bin space and make you check your carry-on at the gate for free. All of this is designed to make you think, you know what? I'll just pay a little more for premium economy next time, so I do not have to deal with this. And guess what? That actually works. People do pay more because the basic experience is deliberately made unpleasant. The international game. International flights are where this really gets crazy. International airlines often sell tickets at even lower prices because there's more competition. But then they make up for it with even more fees and a completely different service model. On an international flight, you might see a ticket for $499 from New York to London. That seems incredibly cheap for a 6-hour flight across the Atlantic. But that's basically just the cost of the fuel and crew. Everything else is extra. If you want a meal, that's extra. If you want to check a bag, that's extra. If you want a blanket or a pillow, that's extra on some airlines. If you want to pick your seat, that's extra. And these fees add up incredibly fast on international routes. The really interesting thing is that international carriers don't always have the same ancillary revenue model as American carriers because of regulations and different market expectations. But they're catching up. It's becoming more and more common globally to charge for everything. Why this matters for you? The reason I'm telling you all this is because once you understand how airlines make money, you can actually game the system a little bit and save money. You can't fight the system entirely, but you can make smarter decisions. For example, if you understand that airlines make money from baggage fees, you can try to travel with just a carry-on bag. That alone saves you $30 or $60. If you understand that seat selection fees are a profit center, you can just let the airline assign you a seat randomly instead of paying for a good one. That saves another $10 or $15. If you understand that frequent flyer miles and credit cards are how airlines really monetize their customer base, you can strategically use those programs. Some credit cards give you a way better deal than paying cash for premium economy upgrades. If you're flying regularly, these cards might actually save you money even after you account for the annual fee. If you book at the right time and be flexible about your dates, you can catch flights when ticket prices are low, which means you can avoid paying extra to upgrade or pay other fees because you're already on a cheaper flight to begin with. And here's the big one. If you understand that airlines make money from convenience, you can choose to be less convenient. Book in advance instead of last minute. Fly at unpopular times instead of peak times. Fly to cheaper airports instead of more convenient ones. All of this saves money because it makes the airline's job easier, so they don't need to charge you as much. The future of airline pricing. This business model is only going to become more extreme. Airlines are constantly testing new fee structures. Some airlines have experimented with charging for carry-on bags. Some have experimented with charging for using the bathroom. Some have experimented with charging for priority boarding. Most of these experiments end because customers complain, but a few stick because people either accept them or don't have a choice. The thing is, as long as there's competition on price, airlines are forced to keep base fares low. And as long as base fares are low, airlines need to make money somewhere else. So the fees will keep increasing. It's basically inevitable unless something changes dramatically in how the industry operates. But here's the thing that's actually interesting about this from a business perspective. Airlines are so focused on squeezing out every last bit of ancillary revenue that some of them are forgetting about actual customer service and making people want to fly with them. A customer that saves $50 on fees but has a terrible experience is probably going to switch airlines next time. So there's actually an opportunity here for an airline to differentiate itself by not charging for everything and instead competing on service. That could actually be a winning strategy, but so far no major airline has really tried it. The bottom line. The airline industry figured out how to turn a commodity business where everyone is competing on price into a business where they can charge you for everything. It's smart business, and it's working incredibly well for them. But for you as a customer, understanding this means you can make smarter decisions about when and how to fly. The next time you're booking a flight and you see that cheap headline price, don't get excited yet. Add up all the fees and figure out what you're actually paying. Compare that to other airlines and other options. Sometimes driving is actually cheaper when you factor in parking at the airport and all the airline fees. Sometimes taking a train is a better option. Sometimes flying at a different time or to a different airport saves you enough money to make it worth the inconvenience. The airlines want you to just look at that headline price and think you're getting a deal. But now you know better. You know exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it. And that knowledge is actually power when it comes to saving money on flights. Subscribe to the channel and I'll keep breaking down how businesses make money in ways that might surprise you.